Welcome back. This is Barbecue, and I'm in the first mission for the MiG21BiS module, the first single-player mission, which is a navigation tour. And it's really good practice for learning navigation on the MiG-21, primarily using these two instruments. Now, there's been a tutorial done by John, an excellent tutorial that I highly recommend. And after looking at that one, you could consider this a sort of supplement practice, whereas John goes into a lot of how everything works. I'll comment on that as well, but it's going to be more of a practical sort of examples of getting to various fixed points and going from one to another and sorting out the to from problem that I will talk about. So the first waypoint that we've got here is going to be Sanaki, which is at number 14 on the navigation panel here, and I've got my setup to go to the RSBN instead of the ARC mode, and we'll go ahead and start heading off in that direction, and I'll continue as we approach our first waypoint. By the way, you want to avoid using the afterburner on this first takeoff because you only have enough fuel to get to where you need to land to refuel. If you use your afterburner, it's gonna be close and you might run out of fuel. So I'm just at full military power. Clean up the gear, the flaps. Okay, so we're not going to hear the beacon channel number 14 until we get a little bit of altitude. But I happen to know that it's basically in this direction. So the mission calls for an altitude of 4,000 meters and between 8 and 900 knots. There it is. So you saw that needle start moving. Now it's pointing. We're pointing right at it. When there's no signal, it goes off to 45 degrees to the right. So whenever it's at 45 degrees to the right, you need to make sure that you're getting your signal. I'm going to go ahead and turn that audio signal off. We know we're getting a signal because it's not cocked over 45 degrees to the right. And I'm going to try to keep my pitch up and try to maintain a speed of 500 knots until we get to Angels 4. You can see we've got our range here to the channel, to the station 21. And we've just passed through 2,000 feet, or 2,000 meters rather. Again, you want to watch your afterburner. You don't want to use that, at least in this first part, as you have just enough fuel to get to where we're going to land in order to refuel and take off again. Okay, there's 3,000, 19 miles away. or yeah, kilometers rather. 14, I meant. Okay, we'll start to level out. And I can, there we go, that's about right. We'll just call that good. And I'm going to come off the throttle a bit so that, okay, so we've got a message to change to RSBN 16. So we'll change the channel to 16. So we've lost the signal. You can see the needle's cocked over, but now we've picked it up. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, let it finish spinning there. I was saying come off full military power so that you're going to end up at about 800 knots. We want to, you said you could go between 8 and 900. We're going to go 800 to conserve fuel. So I'll go ahead and turn towards the new RSBN station. And so now we're heading, almost 200, 73 kilometers away. And here we can look at our needles a little bit. So this, let's, for lack of a better word, skinny one, is always going to be pointing to your navigation source. So this is what determines your navigation source, whether you're using RSBN or ARC. And it's always going to be pointed to the station that you've selected here on this panel. Unless it's not picking up a signal, which we've already talked about, it will cock over to the right 45 degrees. It's like I'm not quite getting to 800 knots. I want to add some throttle here. So that needle you cannot control. Okay, when you use this knob here, what you're moving is this other needle, and it's basically your course needle, your desired course needle. So right now we've just been told to go directly to station 14, which is, I think, Snaki. So all we had to do was point to the station, and that's it. It doesn't really matter what radial we're on. So, however, I know that as we approach Snaki, we're going to be told to go on a radial of 92. And so I've pre-set up my course needle to point to 92. Looks like it's about 90 actually. Maybe one more little notch there. So as we get closer, we'll end up turning so that we can intercept that radial. Now, here's the thing. This needle, as we've said, always points to the actual station. So this end of the needle, if we had that at our 12 o'clock position, that would mean that pointing to the station would be behind us, directly behind us, and we'd be moving away from the selected station. So at the moment, what do we got? Oh, there's our escort. Hello. at the moment we're heading to the station, but as we get our instructions for our next waypoint, we're gonna stay on this channel, but we're gonna be getting directions, and it's gonna be in a from situation, if that makes sense. So we're gonna be moving, our range here is gonna be increasing instead of decreasing, and we'll get a call like 92 for 63. So we want to be on radial 92 at 63 miles from the station. And so I could intercept that radial without going directly to the station first, but just for simplicity's sake and to understand it a little better, we'll go ahead and overfly the station and then take a hard turn to the left, because when you're over the station, it's really easy to get on the radial you want. You just go to that heading. So we're going to be in a from situation at that point, and our range is going to be increasing. However, at the moment, we're in a to situation. I think Western aircraft actually have a to from switch on the HSI, so basically it's going to point to it. You don't have to worry about the to from situation, and you can just follow the actual needle without really knowing, having really navigational awareness in a sense. We'll see what I'm talking about as you get more proficient at this. So we're approaching 10 miles. We're a little bit past 800, so I'm going to 800 knot kph. I'm going to back it off a little bit because we really do need to save our fuel. We've got some escorts, looks like, and we're quickly approaching the station here. So here we go. Let's pause this. Okay, so it wasn't Sanaki the whole time I was talking about. It was Sanaki was the first one. This is Batumi that we're close to, which is station 16 on the RSBN. So, like I said before, we've got these commands for these separate waypoints where it gives you the radial and the distance. So the first one, as I said, was 92 for 63. Second one, after we hit that, the second one is 103 for 123, and then the third one is 096 from 184. So try to visualize this. The way that they've given these instructions, let's see if I can, yeah. Okay, the way they've given these instructions, if we think about 092 in relation to the station. So the station's right over Batumi, which is what we're looking at here, right? And so imagine a compass rose on this. 092 is roughly east, okay? So we need to be over here at 63 kilometers from here. So actually I think I can have to unpause it to do that. You know, it's going to be, you could easily get confused and want to go over here, but depending on, you know, because the other end of your course indicator is pointing over to the west, because the head of it is pointing to the east. So you need to be aware, you need to be consistent in how you use that course indicator, and always use the pointed end. It doesn't really matter which end you use, just always use the same end so that you know what you're doing. But basically we're going to want to end up around here, around 63 kilometers on radial 92. So radial 33 would be, or radial 45 let's say, would be right around here. Radial 00 would be around here. 270 would be around here. And radial 180 would be around here. So we're starting at 092, but then we go to 103 radial, so which is just a little bit, it'll be a little bit of a turn to the right as we're heading this direct east. And it'll be a little further out, so we'll wait until we're at 123 kilometers from the base, and that'll be around here. And then we're going to come back and take back to 96. So it's going to be a turn back towards our original heading, but it'll be 96 instead of 92. So it's going to be like maybe around here somewhere, and it'll be at 184 kilometers, which will be about right here. So when we enter the sim, back into the sim, we're going to overfly, and we're going to turn hard to get on the 9-2 radial, and we're going to fly out this way until we get to 63 kilometers. Then we're going to take a little bit of a right-hand turn until we get on radial 103, and we're going to go further on that, and then we're going to come back and take a little left-hand turn and go out to 184, and then we'll get more instructions at that point for the next ones. So I'm specifically not showing you the instrument right now because it's helpful to visualize from a bird's eye view in which direction you're basically, what kind of turns you're going to be coming up to. So because you can get confused when you're trying to get on the radial, because you're going to be looking at both the needles to try to get them to line up, and you might think, oh, it'd be better to turn this way because that would be faster to get them to line up, but then you end up going in the wrong direction, so it can get confusing because of the to-from situation. So this way we know we're going to take a left turn, and then we're going to go for a while, we're going to take a right turn, and then we're going to take a left turn. So let me get back into the sim here. Okay, so we're about 2 miles. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start the turn. And since we set up our course indicator, we know that we can just go right to it, maybe a little past it, because we're not going to nail it exactly. So since we didn't nail it exactly, well, actually, let me pause it here. The goal here, to be on radial 9-2, means that we're going to have this needle and this needle are going to be lined up and pointing to the 12 o'clock position. So they're not lined up right now. And if we were just going directly away from the station, remember we talked about this needle here. The pointy end points to the station. So we're going to be moving away from it, and so we're going to, in order to move directly away from it, we want this end of it to be pointing to the 12 o'clock. Well, why aren't we doing that? Well, because we're not on radial 9-2 yet. We need to fly a little bit to the left in order to get this to line up a little bit better, and then we'll have them both lined up and pointing to the 12 o'clock position. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Like I lost some altitude. Now I'm assuming that you listened to John's excellent tutorial on the various indications. Maybe I should briefly go over them first though. So now we're lined up. We're on radial 092, and we need to be at 62 miles, or rather 63 miles away, and we're only at 14 kilometers. We're only at 15 at the moment, so we just want to maintain our current course. I'm going to get back up to 4,000 here. So when you remember when we were over to the left and they weren't lined up, well, I started the turn when I saw this yellow indicator here on this circle. It was way over here. These are deviation indicators, these dots. I can't remember how many degrees they represent, but it was way over to the left. And since we were so close to the station, or relatively close, we were at like 15 miles, you know, that thing is going to move fast when these two start aligning, these two needles start aligning. The further away you are from the station, the slower that line is going to move, because you're going to have to travel greater distance to get on the radial. So hopefully that makes sense here. You want to keep this lined up. And another trick, well, not a trick, but just to prepare for our next turn, we know that it's going to be a right-hand turn, and it's going to be to 103 is the radial that we're going to want to be on. Let me make sure of that. Got a little note here, but I think it's 103. Yes, it's 103. 103 for 123. So we can line this up perfectly so that we're on the 9.2 radial. So I'm going to move a little bit over to the right. And really try to center that good. That looks about right. So we can actually prepare by changing this. Since we're already lined up, we know that we're on the right heading. Actually, maybe we can go a little bit over more. Just a tad. Sometimes the radio signal isn't so great, and that's why, even though on the ADI it shows we're dead on, these are not lined up exactly. See that the signal we're getting is a little bit jittery. But at any rate, we know we're on the right heading, and that all we need to do is maintain this heading until we get to 63. So we can go ahead and change our course knob to set it to 103, about right there, and just maintain this heading. Even though it shows we're off, we're on 92, but we're approaching 63, and once we hit 63, we're going to take a right-hand turn so that we can line up on radio 103 from. Now, since we're further away, we're moving further and further away from the station, we're going to want to give a lot of room to get that to line up on our new radial. So I'm going to let it go to like 45 degrees to the left. Until we see that indicator start to move on the ADI, which is the instrument above the HSI. I'm not sure if that's what they're called I know that's not what they're called in Russian, but so here it's starting to move. See it? It's not moving as fast. And it's fun to try to start your turn and try to time it so that you can maintain the same amount of bank in your turn to see if you can line them up by the time, you know, the turn gets to the new radial. Now remember, we need to go to it's 103 for 123. And we're at 77 now. Okay, it looks like I turned a little too quick, so we'll come back to the right a little bit. Now, if we were at like 120 right now, we'd have to turn a lot more to the right to line up perfectly. And then it'd be really quick, hard left turn to get back onto the radial. But we've got a little bit of wiggle room here, so we'll take it slow. There, that's about right. So, looks like we're lined up pretty well. Probably increase my speed a bit. and get back to 4,000. Okay, so since we're lined up pretty well, and we're at almost 100 kilometers, about 25 miles to go. And our next turn is going to be, if you remember, is going to be to the left. And it's going to be radial 96 for 184 kilometers. Looks like I'm a little bit off here, so we'll correct that. Also, you can see this needle here is also indicating, John talked about that, how that's the sort of lessen your workload and just follow that. So as we're a little bit to the left, it's telling us to fly a little bit to the right. But now it's telling us to straighten back out. So we'll call that good. Now we're approaching 123, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this to radial 96, which is about there. It's just a small left-hand turn. And you can see that everything's whacked out now. It's telling us to turn to the left, but we'll wait until we cross our distance measurement, 123, before we turn. That's about right. Now this is only a like 6 or 7 degree turn, but because we are getting further and further away from the station, we'll go ahead and turn a lot more past the radial. There you can see it's moving, but it's not moving very fast. But we've got some wiggle room because the waypoint is still another 50 some kilometers away. Now these past 3 waypoints have all been from the station, from station 16. And let's start the turn. The ones coming up are going to be to a new station, as we'll see in a moment. Okay, I call that good. So you can see we're all lined up again on radial 96 from Batumi, which is 16. And we need to be 184 miles from there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause it again. This threw me at first because these new waypoints, waypoint 6, we're moving towards waypoint 6 right now. So waypoint 6 is on radial 96 at 184 kilometers from Batumi, from station 16, but we're going to be switching to channel 11, which is Vaziani. And in relation to Vaziani, here, okay, so again, from Batumi, we're on radial 96 at 184 miles, and that's about right. But if we switch channels, we go to a channel 11, which is Vaziani, which is here. it's the same physical location in space, but in relation to Vaziani, it's radial 241 for 115. And you can see that 241, okay, that's about right, and it's about 115 miles away. So waypoint 6 doesn't change. It's just saying that, okay, in relation to Vaziani, if you change to channel 11, it's going to be this. So once we're not going to change to 11, to channel 11, until we actually get to radial 96 at 184, and then at that point, then we'll change to channel 11, and we'll head towards waypoint 7, which is 235 for 53 in relation to Vaziani. So we've still got 30 miles to go, 30 kilometers to go. Now, if we wanted to, we could change to 11 right now and change our course to indicator to, what was it, 254, something like that. But let's just keep it simple. Let's just use channel, our current channel, and go to 184 miles, and then we can change to channel 11 and change our course. We can actually change our course thing now, since and then we just won't change our heading until we get to 184. And remember, we're not going to go to waypoint 6, because that's what we're doing now. We're going to go to 7, which was calling for a radial 235 for 53 miles. We'll go change the course indicator to 235. That's good enough, and we're gonna wait until we get to 184, and then we're gonna change our channel to 11. There's 180. Okay, 184. So we've changed to 11. And it ends up that the course that we're on, you can see all this changing now. So here's our pointer to the station. You know, it was pointing behind us. Now it's pointing a little bit to the left. And since we're not quite on the new radial 235, we're in a perfect position to just wait it out. Look, the needle, there goes the needle, it's moving. So this one's a little bit confusing, but if you just visualize it from a bird's eye view, and realize that they're repeating waypoint 6, just giving you the distance and radial from the new station's perspective, makes it a little easier. So looks like we're turning a little bit too fast. And remember, the distance was like 53, and we're at 99. So we've got some wiggle room. That's about right. Maybe too much. So we'll go ahead and pass it a little bit so we can come back. Get it perfect here, as perfect as we can. That's about right. Okay. So now, since we're moving to the station, remember the little circle, that pointer points away from the station, and we're going to it, so we've lined it up this way, and now our range equipment is decreasing, and that's good because our radial is on 235, which we're on at, the waypoint is at radial 235 at 53. The next one, once that gets to 53, is Vaziani direct. So they're just saying we'll fly directly towards Vaziani, you know, to overfly it. And since we're already pointed at Vaziani, we're not going to have to change anything. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the time here. We've got a new escort coming, and see, as we get closer to the station, we get a little bit more accurate, and we need to come to the left a little bit to stay on the radial. Oh, that was an SC-27 just flew by. That must be our new escort. Okay, we've still got 43 miles to go, so I'll go ahead and increase the time. Okay, we've got about 18 miles to go, but let's go ahead and set up for the next waypoint and get back on our radial, because we need to come a little bit more to the left again. As we get closer to the station, things start getting, minute corrections get required. And you can see that the little correction I did would have worked fine if we had been 80 miles away, but you can chase this thing as you get closer to the station. But we're gonna call all right, man, come on, easy. Yeah, you really don't want to chase this thing, which is what I'm doing. See, we're flying over it now, and we haven't quite set up for the next one, but it's basically 353, and we'll go ahead and set up our course. Let me make sure that it's 353. 358. No, it's 338. Okay. There, but now it's going to be from Vaziani. So we're going to have Vaziani pointing. We're going to have to line up. Basically, we're lined up. We're going away from the station. You can see that the range is increasing, but we're on the wrong radial. So we need to take a, let's see. So 338 is going to be off in this direction. So we're going to want to have to take a left-hand turn to intercept the radial. So we're going to go past it. Since we're fairly close to the station. Let's just stick it about right there until they start moving together. Now here's another interesting point. You can see that that the station is 90 degrees to the right. If we keep that always on 90 degrees either way, to the left or to the right, we're never going to change our distance, because we're just going to be doing a circle around the station, if that makes sense. If you keep this on 90, so now we're moving away from it because it's past that 90, it's going, it's moving this direction. If it were moving that direction, we'd be getting closer. So that's one thing that really sort of finally made things click for me in a different aircraft. But understanding how these needles work is that once I realized that, hey, if you just keep it pointing at 90 degrees all the time, you're doing a circle around the station. That somehow made a light bulb go off in my head and made me understand this a little bit. So hopefully it does the same for you. And we need to be at, what was it, 53? 63. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room here. We're already at 30. There's our new Escort, SU-27 it looks like. So hopefully this thing will start moving. You can see that they're getting closer. I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit of a turn. Again, we're moving away from the station now. There it's going. Kilometers away. I guess we've got a little bit of wiggle room. Okay. Let's call it that good. Now our last one is at 336 for 119. So let's go ahead and set up for that. 336, that's just a few degrees to the left, so it's going to be a left-hand turn. But we'll wait until we get to 63 before we start the turn. Have lots of wiggle room on this one because we have to go to 119 kilometers away, coming up on 63. Boom, there it is. So I'll go ahead and get on the new radial by turning to the left. And waiting for it to move into place. Since we're moving away from the station, it's going to move slow. So actually, I'm going to give it a little help by moving further away. Even though it's a very small change, because we're moving so far away, it's going to take some time. Looks like we can correct it a little bit. And we're looking for 119. We're at about 90. Okay. And we don't know where we're going from here. That was our last waypoint, so we'll just have to wait and hopefully get a new message here. Now we need to correct a little bit to the left. Our signal's a little flaky. Okay, so now it's saying set RSBN to channel 9. Okay. And just from experience, I know that we just need to fly towards 9. Doesn't matter the radial, so let's wait for it to catch the signal. Okay, so it looks like we just need to go to the right a little bit. And we just head straight for it. And now we're decreasing since we changed our channel to 9, which is Mozdok. And basically, once we get to Mozdok or close to it, it's going to set us up to go ahead and land at Nalchik, which is close by to there, to refuel. Because as you can see, we're down to a little less than 2,000 units, metric units of fuel, whatever those are. And so hopefully this has been helpful. Again, I highly recommend first viewing John's tutorial on RSBN, and once you view that, you might have got it already, but in case you haven't, I think that you can practice the first single mission for the MiG-21, which is a navigation tour that we've been going through. And hopefully this has been helpful to facilitate your learning radials and your distance from the RSBN stations and how to fly the routes. See you next time.